morning, good afternoon, good evening, Y whales, wherever you are in the world. Today we have another awesome YPOer slash Y whaler with Tammy Camp from Stronghold. Really interesting one. She's been around in the business for quite a while, so I can absolutely give her OG status. Clearly, has a lot to say about the industry, is very involved in the industry, and has pushed the adoption of the cryptocurrency blockchain technologies quite a bit over the years. But Tammy, let's go ahead and start with kind of like how did you get here? And prior to Stronghold, what was really your first exposure into cryptocurrencies and kind of blockchain that got you this hooked?
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I know that I'm super excited to chat with you and the YPO community as a newer member. So I'm super excited and thanks again for having me.
Absolutely.
Um, as yeah, as it relates to how I got into crypto, well, um, I first learned about blockchain in 2011. Um, I have been a serial entrepreneur for basically almost my entire career. Um, and I grew up in the South. So I grew up in Alabama and Georgia. And, I had my first company right out of college, and it was a technology company, and I'm actually technical, so I've been writing software since I was 6. And I moved to Silicon Valley in 2011 because I knew that to kind of like level up what I was doing in the world and kind of to be around the some of the top innovators. I knew I had to make the move, and so in 2011 I moved to Silicon Valley, and I went to this program called Singularity University, which is a program that teaches. There was 80 of us that got accepted into this program. It was a think tank to kind of pull together next generation leaders to teach them about exponential technologies and how they can impact the world positively, and um, you know, impact a billion people positively in 10 years, right? That was the whole thesis around it. And so we learned about things like global health and education and space and security, and it was an amazing program. It was 3 months long, and it was like one TED talk after another. And so one of the professors, if you will, his name was Ralph Merkel, and he was teaching us about Bitcoin and cryptography. And Ralph Merkel within crypto is actually quite popular because of Ethereum. If you hear of Merkle trees, that is the Merkle trees, that metallic named after this very guy, Ralph Merkel. So he's a famous cryptographer. He created public private keys, how we know it on the internet today. And so he was there back in 2011 teaching us about this new protocol, Bitcoin. And so that's where I first learned about it, and we were super excited. We were trying to figure out how to buy it, and at that time we couldn't quite figure it out, and then fast forward to 2013, it was becoming a little more popular. I kept hearing about it in the news, and so I was like, how does this work? I just gotta. I'm one of those people that who my learning style is such where I just kind of jump in and figure out the nuts and bolts of it by building it. So what happened was that I started building Bitcoin miners, and Litecoin miners and Dogecoin miners and programming them to mining pools in 2013. So that's how I learned about Bitcoin, by actually like building out the rigs with CPU cards and then programming them. And Dogecoin was really, kind of taking off at that point in 2013. Now,
Yeah, no,
it was
I remember the Reddit, the entire Reddit, like making the joke of Bitcoin and everything that they were doing.
That's right. It was so much fun, and I ended up. There was somebody who had the software on Twitter where, you could. There was a tip. It was a tipping Dogecoin bot, and so funny enough, I was, kind of playing around with it because I had a lot of Dogecoin at that point, and I became one of the largest tippers on Twitter with Dogecoin because it was just so much fun. Thought I was like getting everybody into crypto and things like that. And and so at that point, um, there were these, two people, Jen McCaleb and Joyce Kim, which, um, the Jen McCaleb is actually the inventor of Ripple. Um, and he was starting something, he was kind of peeling off from Ripple and starting something of his own. And it was at that time, it was Jed's secret Bitcoin project, right? And so they kind of call me in, and I remember it so vividly because it was, they call me in and they're like, come to our offices, and I'm like, where is it? And it was in this car garage in the Mission here in San Francisco, an auto repair shop. So I'm going up to this auto repair shop and I'm meeting with them, and I'm like, oh, this is like very interesting. And at that point they're like, oh, okay, I really like the work that you've done, on Twitter. Why don't you come and be our first head of growth at Stellar? And that's how I became a professional in 2014. Um, uh, in the blockchain. So I was the first head of growth there. We put on, I think, 4 million users there, in a little over 4 months. And at that point, that was a lot of usage. And so it kind of, uh, you know, we knew we had to kind of rewrite the software to kind of to kind of take that capacity. And so, that's actually the time when I met my co-founder, Sean, of Stronghold. He was actually the first developer ever on Stellar because he was previously, a Ripple gateway at the time. And so he launched on Stellar, a little just 6 hours after it had launched. And so I used to service his account, and that's how we met. And he was at that point, like a child prodigy, med school dropout. I think he might have been all of 19 or 20 then. And and
Which
and so
back in the day, which just, yeah, just a few years ago, 19 or 20, we would have said, oh my God, he's so young. And now I'd say, wow, that's a really mature Web3 developer.
yes, exactly, exactly.
I mean, some of the kids that we interview around here, I mean, they're waiting on getting their driver's license, but they've already got a multi-million-dollar protocols deployed on chain. It's really interesting, to hear that. So again, I'm sorry for interrupting. Please keep going.
Yeah, no, no, I love it. I love it. And so, yeah, that's where we met in 2000. I after they, Stellar needed to do some rewriting, and so there was really kind of nothing for me to grow at that time. And so I actually went to, a venture fund called 500 Startups, where I led their, Silicon Valley growth and marketing curriculum. They're one of the larger accelerators here in Silicon Valley, and also kind of, you know was the point of contact for, some of the developer tools, the portfolio companies that were developer tool related, also blockchain related and fintech related. So, I was there for a couple of years, and then I went to NFX Capital, where I helped them raise their first 150 million dollar fund. And it was at that time, that was in 2017. So, 2017, there was a lot of excitement about crypto again, right? Because that was when, ICOs were quite popular. And, I was investigating and researching a lot of those. And I was like, you know what? There's actually not, there's still a problem that needs to be solved, at least for me and my co-founder. And we're like, oh, okay, like we really think that, you know, there needs to be something that kind of serves, uh, you know, modernizes payments, in a way that gives financial inclusive access, to all, right? And so we started Stronghold with a premise. I mean, that's our mission, that's our vision. Our mission is to provide fast, secure, and accessible financial services for all, and our vision is to create a more connected, uh, global economy. And so,
So
that
I'm gonna pause you there before we jump into Stronghold, because which is this fabulous story, but I'm not gonna let you get away
okay,
from the previous history, because there's a lot there that I want to unpack a few things so people
sure.
understand, because of your time in there. And again, there's a few statements you made. You started, about 2010, 2011 was your first exposure to Bitcoin, and it was really
Hmm.
complicated. And in fact, again, I the reason why I can't claim OG status is because I threw away 100 Bitcoins because I couldn't figure out how to interact with the Bitcoin node, and I just said, forget it. It's, who cares? This is just a test. And it's I'm glad to at least hear that you as a programmer struggled with it as well. But when you got back into it in 13, was it kind of did you fully believe at that point, or did it still take you some time to really dive into the whole cryptocurrencies?
Well, I was just kind of just figuring out how it all worked. I mean, that's why, as I mentioned, like my style of learning was okay, why is this interesting? Um, you know, how are some people claiming that this is, a trend that will um, change the way that you know payments are settled or how we exchange value. So, um, I think that a lot of people kind of fall in love with this idea of um, decentralization and this collaborative community of not having to rely on any one centralized governing aspect. I think a lot of people fall in love with that. Now, that's not my opinion today, but that's certainly why I fell in love with like the idealism of that. So yeah, I kind
Yeah,
of technically jumped in um, just so I could understand it a little more. And so, if you would have come to my house in 2013, you would have seen, you know, Bitcoin miners sitting in, the corner of my living room, trying not to overheat, um, sitting win- sitting next to a window so I could crack it, and so the cold air could
yeah.
come in to cool it down, and so
Uh,
yeah,
so
it
that's
was
fabulous. So and then Stronghold. What year did you say that you guys founded that?
2017, yeah.
So you
Well,
were right there, and just again for the listeners who may not have the information in front of them, when was Crypto Winter kind of officially announced, and when did it end?
I can't remember
Because
because
you
we've
were
been
you were
through.
right there in the middle of it.
Well, yeah, I've seen obviously like four or five of them now, right? So,
Yeah.
because there was one from like 2011 to 2013, and then it kind of broke ahead in 2013, and then there was another kind of lull in 15, 16, and
Yep.
then 2017 it was pretty, and 18 it was pretty, um, popular again. It has high highs and low lows, and um, yeah, I think that the folks that are kind of resilient and kind of stick with it, you know, it's interesting to see how the market, like people vacillate between believing whether it's an impactful technology or not. And I think that's really hard for, just a beginner to kind of decouple. There's two things about like crypto and blockchain. Like I think a lot of there's the speculative
Hmm.
aspect about it, and then there's the technology that is pretty revolutionary. And so I think a lot of people are curious about the speculative asset of it. But what I'm super passionate about is really the technology behind what it can do, and having these immutable databases. That's really the innovation here. Um,
And it's early. I mean, you were very early, but I mean, this is where we still sit today. I like to equate that most people, that are buying and selling cryptocurrencies are more degenerate gamblers than they are actually investors. And the thought of the number of people that are buying and selling these cryptocurrencies without having any knowledge of what in the world they are or what they do is almost an equivalent of like somebody walking into a drugstore and they're just buying and selling gift cards. That some of them are
Yeah.
fancy, some of them have more values, and they're just passing them back and forth. And there's very different, you know, ways that they look at these or ways that they make up that they have better value. But so few people actually utilize those cards and understand what they do on chain. Do you feel like that's going to change much? Because it's kind of hard to get through the hype around it, or do you think it takes takes a good regulation to pull down the hype meters on these things?
Well, again, I think if you want to decouple, right, you're talking about the speculative asset. So
Yes.
you're what I'm hearing you say, right, just let me repeat you, is that you're saying that most of the people that are in the market today are typically speculators, and then um, you know, say let's say it's 80% speculators and 20% builders that kind of admire the technology and can see that how
Correct.
the technology can impact the world in a better place in the future. Um, huh, I don't know because I'm on the developer side, so I don't actually know like what's actually driving all of the curiosity. I mean, I guess I'm now realizing, yeah, like, maybe it is 80% um, that way, and yeah, yeah, if that is the case, if that is indeed true, then yeah, there's a lot of work to do, you know, by
On
educating
education.
a lot of these people because it really the value is on the technology side. You know, all of these other, you know, the usage and the utility is a subset, right, of the utility of what you're using it for.
Well, I think a lot of it is I would say a majority of people today, and again, this is my own statement. It's not backed up by any facts. Are a lot like what you were doing back in the day with Doge. It's fun, it's cute, it's exciting, it exposes them to something new. But and again, I'm not comparing Doge to anything else that you're doing today. But it was clearly designed as like a good entry point into cryptocurrencies to understand how to hold them, how to sell them, how to move them. Um, but yeah, in this industry education is just so far lacking, and education from a variety of standpoints, from understanding what these protocols do, to also developers to help you continue to build out the space. Do you
Yeah, it's
see,
true.
yeah, what are you
Yeah,
seeing up from your end? Are you seeing more schools or
yeah.
colleges starting to offer?
Um, I think that there's great programs like around like I think Berkeley has really great programs. I think there are more folks you know, programs out there, but it's interesting because from my perspective, again, like my perspective has changed over time. I think a lot of developers actually start with Bitcoin, right? Because, like, you know, it's the most popular one. You know, it's the one that has most adoption because it's a transfer of value. But when you start looking at other problems or derivatives, like particularly like the ones that I'm trying to solve, you know, Bitcoin may not be the best technology for the use case that you're trying to solve for. And so that is certainly the case with Stronghold, right? And so I think around 2014, I started looking at other technologies that were faster, more secure, um, were pre-mined, didn't have a lot of like since 2013, 14, I knew that because I had built the miners, I knew that Bitcoin wasn't sustainable from an energy point of view. Like it was my opinion that you know, it was not environmentally friendly since 2014, and so you know, I think that you know I'll probably get a lot of you know pushback for saying that comment, but
Well, I think that, you
you
know
know,
what, I'm gonna go ahead and defend you, and also open it up for some clarification on there. So it is hard to run any computer or any software service in any way, shape, or form from a pure CO2 standpoint and understand the valuation. Is proof of work power hungry monster. Yeah, absolutely. No one's going to deny it. But I think that one of the things that it's doing slowly is it's starting to push the adoption of alternative energies. It's
Yeah.
starting to push the adoption of cheaper power sources, as well as I think we're seeing a lot of this now. And Tammy, like I said, I don't know how involved you are in the mining aspect of the world anymore, but we hear from Fred Thiel at Marathon quite a bit. Is being located right next to the power stations and utilizing what would normally be just burnt power, meaning they were just going to
So
throw it away or
interesting.
off gas it, that they can
Hmm.
fire up for 4 or 5 hours. Bitcoin miners get some use out of it, some energy usage, which normally would be thrown away. But I completely agree with you that proof of work. Um, well, let's hear about it. What's your opinions on proof of work versus proof of stake?
Well, again, like I don't have any strong opinions about one or the other. Again, like my perspective has changed over time. I think that I do like adore Bitcoin just because like it has sparked the curiosity of a lot of folks. So like I was just thinking about it the other day, and a way that I kind of articulate it now is that Bitcoin did its job within blockchains and cryptocurrency because it kind of gave the entire world, like product market fit, right? We have product market fit for cryptocurrency with Bitcoin. Now, if you go into, we're still in this, we're still early, right? And so I think that there's all these newer technologies that once you have developers developing on them, then you want to find channel product market fit. And so I think that we're in this, we're graduating, um, we're graduating into this new realm where we are finding new use cases. We're finding like NFTs are one of them, right? Payments is one of them, and so finding the right technology for your like channel product market fit is where we are, and it's more exciting today just because we just have more things to choose from, right? Imagine like all the things that we have to choose from today. We have Ethereum, we have Solana, we have Ripple, we have Stellar, we have, you know, Avalanche, we have, all of these like different protocols, and that just wasn't the case in 2013 and 14. And so it's very interesting to see like how the the industry has evolved over time, but it's still early. Can you imagine that? It's still early. Like, I imagine a world in 10 years from now, maybe the things that are popular today, will cycle through and it'll be something else that might be more efficient and might be more environmentally safe or might have a better developer community. I mean, Solana, they've come out of nowhere. They have a great developer community. There's it's just really amazing to see. So, how we know it today is definitely better than when I started, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen, in the next 5 to 10 years because I still feel like it's evolving. If you look at,
Let
I'll give a good example. If you look at search, like
Mhm.
Web 1.0, 2.0, um, you know, Google. Remember, there was Dogpile, there was Yahoo, there was Excite, there was Alta Vista. Like there was all of these search engines, and then Google just came out of nowhere at the end
Yep.
and kind of took the market, right, for
Yep.
search. And you can actually even say the same thing for social media, right? There was Friendster, there was High Five, there was MySpace. Remember Tom from MySpace? Was Tom your friend, Jay?
Being early doesn't always mean you won the race.
Yeah.
You can absolutely, I
And
mean, and there's no doubt you can become extremely wealthy by being first in line. But as far as longevity, I think that it's been proven that it doesn't hurt
yeah,
to
it
kind of
doesn't
wait a
always,
second.
yeah. And Facebook again, same thing, kind of came in, last and then kind of took the whole market. So I don't know what's gonna happen here. I'm
So
I'm
let
excited to see what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so I got two good questions for you. So let's start with one. So Web 1, Web 2, Web 3 is coming. Web 1 was the computer, Web 2 is mobile. What do you have, again, cryptocurrencies are part of. Web3, but do you have any strong opinions on how Web3 will be actually defined?
Well, what I'm hearing, I think everybody defines Web3 as different things, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, so, some people can say, oh, it's the metaverse. Some people can say that Web3 is, you know, Web 1 and 2 kind of wrapped together, but, Web 3 is more of, you know, having users be rewarded, or having their ecosystem be rewarded, and paid out. Um, I think everybody has a different definition for it. Um,
So let
for
me
me,
let me throw out a decent one that I've heard from
okay,
another
yeah. What do
YPO
you
member.
think?
So Web
Okay.
one was defined by the first time that users spent 4 to 5 hours sitting in front of a computer screen doing work
Hmm.
in that manner. Web two is defined by people spending 4 to 5 hours staring at a screen on the touching, interacting with the screen on their phone, not talking on their phone, but interacting with the screen on the phone. And the head of HTC development said, very clearly, they spent a lot of time on this. That Web three will be defined on 4 to 5 hours in some sort of AR or VR environment that is absolutely coupled with cryptocurrencies and kind of the decoupling of the traditional financial um, world or metrics as we know today. Would you agree with
Hmm.
that? It's hard to think about spending 4 to 5 hours in a virtual
Um,
world.
I believe that half of that is true,
Okay.
right? I think that some of that, what you're alluding to, is kind of like gaming.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the VR, if you look at the Meta, the Oculus now, like most of that is games, or interacting, and having a conversation, very much like how we're having one today.
Yeah.
Um, I think it will, again, like, channel product market fit,
Yep.
right? I think it'll be useful in some industries, but I don't think it's going to, winner takes all. It's all going to be this way. I think that it's going to be interoperable. And that's kind of what we saw for at Stronghold. I
Yeah.
think the world will be interoperable, because you're going to have, like, for us on the payment side, it's like you have your traditional payment rails like ACH and credit card. Those things are never going to go away. Um, they'll they'll morph into something else, but then you have these new ledgers, that may be useful in these new channels to have product market fit, but you still need those traditional rails to kind of interact with the banks, and to be interoperable. So what I define as Web3 is that, yes, I think that there are going to be more channels that allow you to be in AR and VR. um, but I think there's still going to be email, and I think there's still going to be, aspects, relics of Web 1.0.
Oh, of
Um,
course.
and right. So it's not it's
I
not like
can't get rid of email if I try. I've tried
it's
really hard.
not take all. I think it's a nice blend and interoperability between the two.
That's
That's
very
my belief.
fabulous. So let's talk about let's kind of dive into decentralization versus centralization, and it's a really interesting topic, and I'd love to hear from again someone who's been around. And it's my personal belief that the rush to decentralization is what's kind of messing up a few of these protocols. That you have a very dedicated team, a very centralized team that comes up with the theses. They get the theses to market and immediately go towards decentralization, and and allowing kind of universal voting, and it's what most of the DAOs are doing today. Um, but you even said, it's interesting on Ethereum now, which is again easily the most decentralized protocol, or probably close to it. I'm sure there's a few others that I'm not fully aware of. But what's your thoughts on kind of the longevity of a completely decentralized project versus a probably 50-50 slightly centralized versus a fully centralized blockchain project?
Yeah. let's dig into that. What you define as decentralized. So you're saying Ethereum is probably the most decentralized one,
So
and
yeah, so decentralized for Ethereum, they have the most nodes out there. And
mm,
almost anything can, anyone can run it with a, home computer. So there's no specialized hardware needed. And there's a lot of voting on directions that this company will go. So it is majority vote wins. But everything's on the table. There's nothing that the a centralized team has said, you know what, I know you voted for this, but we're not going to do that because we don't believe it's for what's best.
sure, the foundation versus the
Correct.
the the folks that have the nodes. Yeah, and so let's dig into more of that, right? And I do this to kind of to poke at this idea because again, the reason why I fell in love with all of these things because of it was the idea of decentralization. Um, I'm not sure if all of these are fully decentralized in my point of view. Like
Please continue.
let's kind of like dig in on Ethereum or even Bitcoin because it's kind of the same thing, right? Um, they all have governance, which is great. Um, and they all have these mining pools. But I think that if you really look at the nodes and if you kind of dig in on who owns these nodes, I mean, you're right. There is a large, long tail of hobbyists that can run these things on their computers. But if you actually look at these networks and kind of really dig in, I think you'll find that, you know, 10, 15, 20 mining companies kind of really operate the network. So is that truly decentralized? You know, I don't I don't know. I don't
What would
know if
what would
I'm
be your
convinced, right?
utopia decentralized world?
The utopia decentralized world, um, and this is not my opinion. Like I think this is a very fact that because I'm not I don't think it's I don't know if I again back to like channel product market that I don't think it's good for some use cases, but then again, like I'm not completely sold that it's good for all use cases. Um, that's a good question. I think it would have to be maybe 1,000 or more independent companies,
Okay.
independent things that kind of have majority share to be truly decentralized.
So
Right?
basically that the top percentage
And this is just
holders.
like me throwing numbers off my
No,
head,
no,
right?
it's I think it's an
Yeah.
interesting point. So you're basically saying at least four figures sharing the top tier of ownership in a
Yeah.
protocol.
Yeah. If you probably look at, I mean, I haven't looked at it anytime soon, and the last time I looked at it, so I'm just, kind of giving you facts that, that I had seen previous. But, if you look back to 80/20, 80% of, those networks are controlled by like 5 to 10 mining companies.
Yeah.
So is that decentralized?
And I fully agree. I mean, we saw Bitcoin being, rather decentralized from the mining aspect, and then this weird
No,
push that
it's
happened
the
last
same
year
thing.
with China over energy to push to get all these guys into a room together to talk about energy conservation, and all that did was centralize with this Bitcoin mining, consortium, which was exactly what Satoshi didn't want. He wanted anyone to run these things. He wanted them all over, and I don't know if exactly he didn't want a Bitcoin mining consortium. I don't know that, but it seems counterintuitive to what the whole white paper was about.
Right, right. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I know that, I mean, if you look at it, yeah, I'm not convinced, that Bitcoin, exactly, that Bitcoin was ever truly decentralized, and I'm still not really convinced that Ethereum is either. But it's a nice bedtime story.
It's such an early technology. There's so many things going on here. So let's jump into a couple other topics that are in and around all of this. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of FUD. There's a lot of people that say cryptocurrency is going to go to zero. There's no long-term store of value. It's a Ponzi scheme. What's when you hear stuff like those, and some of these are highly regarded published authors. Um, I think David Rosenthal just published a very long paper that I saw floating through the Y Whales channels. And again, he picks and chooses what he wants out of every paper that he referenced. But he's very clear that he thinks it's a scam and that it can be changed at any time. Do you believe in the security around Ethereum and Bitcoin?
The security of it maintaining its value,
The
or the
security that
security
there
of,
is no one source of authority. There's no one source. There's no back door that can go in and just take anything from these wallets. That the protocols are secure.
oh, right. I mean, again, I'm not a security expert, but it seems like, you know, Bitcoin is great for that because they have a great foundation, and they are, the way that they kind of push changes through is actually quite slow, which is good, right, for security, because then you can kind of do the proper testing, and then have the proper cryptographers, come in and do that. So, like, from a security perspective, I don't think that is the case, right? It's, Bitcoin again and Ethereum, they have channel market fit. Again, going back to product market fit, well, that channel product market fit, that's for Ethereum. We have NFTs, so that's a good use case. Um, in terms of the store of value, kind of like what these, say, the Warren Buffetts and the Charlie Mungers of the world. Um, I do see their point, right? There's a lot of people that do believe that. One thing that I think that is different about some of these is that they actually have what we would call uh, a tribal network effect, right? So Bitcoin and Ethereum already have a tribal network effect. Therefore, if you have a large amount of people that believe that it is valued this way, if that belief is still sustained over time, then it's my belief that it won't go down to zero, since it's a tribal network effect. It's very similar to the US dollar, because the US dollar is not backed by anything. That's because the entire world, whereas the tribal network effect, that we believe that, the dollar is the standard currency, if you will. That could change. All of this stuff could change, but as it stands today, because there are so many people that believe this, and it doesn't have to be the Charlie Mungers and the Warren Buffetts of the world, but we have enough people that believe this. Therefore, in my opinion, I don't see it going away anytime soon, unless that tribe changes its mind.
Well, and the point I think I'd like to tie into that, and number one, I fully agree with you, is the younger generation has already accepted this as a much more acceptable store of value.
Yeah.
I've got a 14-year-old, and he has absolutely no interest in traditional finance. Trades NFTs with his friends, and utilizes the blockchain for really all his video gaming and interaction on how they place their bets with Doge, and they're messing around with lots of things. And I think it's very interesting. But um, the more that you see this past generation, the Mungers and the Warren Buffetts and everything else. And to be clear, if I was in their shoes, I would just
Yeah,
dismiss it
they're,
anyway. There's
they're
no
it's
time
very
to even think
valid.
about, yeah, about
Exactly. Their
about wanting
their
to get
their
involved.
opinions are
Yeah,
so valid. It's so valid,
yeah,
valid, absolutely. See their point.
yeah. I mean, it yeah, but there's absolutely, there would be no reason. They've clearly conquered the
Yeah.
existing era, and everything we're looking at is maybe still a decade away. I mean, I think that when you really got involved in 2013 and started your company in 17, you're thinking it's right around the corner. Like in a few months, this is going to go mainstream, and it has. But I mean, there's still less than what 2%
It
of the world
hasn't.
has Ethereum addresses.
Yeah, that's right. It has, but it really hasn't. It's still early. Isn't that crazy? Or 10 years in, and I'm like, wow, we're still early. We're still very
You know
early.
it.
It's exciting.
So what do you think is the, for Stronghold? Let's be clear on this is your opinion. What will it take for you to feel like Stronghold has hit mainstream? That you're everyone's beating down your door because you have the cryptocurrency solution. What's going to be the precipice that really pushes that over? Is it going to be the banks adopting it? Is it going to be media adopting it, or is it just going to be kind of bypassing TradFi and just a number of businesses saying, I don't need to start up in the fiat world. I can just go to Stronghold and a number of other suppliers and still pay my taxes, do everything else, but I don't need to be part of the TradFi world.
Right. So just a little bit about Strongholds. We're a developer API company, and as I mentioned previously, again, this might be controversial. Like, I still really love the old traditional financial systems because that's how I pay my bills, and
Yeah.
you know, this is how we do payroll. This is how we run payroll. This is probably how you're paying for this, Riverside software that
We
you're
we we
you're
are we
inter.
are we are 98% crypto payments on everything. We force ourselves to live in this world. It's not easy.
It's amazing. Um, yeah, and so I think that again, I just think it's super interoperable, and so how we feel Stronghold will be successful. Like we have hundreds of businesses running on top of us today, but it really is that interoperability. Again, my belief is that it'll be a blend of the two still. That you know because you still need to pay your taxes, right? And I don't know if the U.S. government or your state or local authorities are going to take cryptocurrencies anytime soon. So I think that if you want to, like, I just want to take a step back and decouple it. It's my belief that when people adopt the technology, then like we're not in the while we do have our own cryptocurrency, like, it's the speculative asset is not what we're looking at here. We're looking at the adoption of the technology. And so we have hundreds of businesses running off of our technology, our payment processing, um, and which allows access to the traditional rails, but allows businesses to get rewarded in cryptocurrency, right? I think that they need to get, if you get adoption with the cryptocurrency, then um, if you just get it into people's hands, then they'll be more comfortable on what to do with it, or how they feel about it, or how they even want to account for it, how they want to account for it. So for us, what success looks like is just really solving problems, right? We have all these industries that we do quite a number of verticals, but it's just allowing people to move value from one place to another in the most efficient way. And as long as we continue to solve that problem for businesses, and then we have more and more adoption, that's what success looks like to us, is just solving that problem. And our cryptocurrency is a nice subset of that adoption.
Let's talk about the coin. Your coin. Is it a coin or a token?
Um, I guess it's a currency, yes.
So it's a coin. Okay, very cool. Very cool. So talk to us about kind of the use case and how you adopted it, and a little bit of the tokenomics around it. So
Sure.
how you guys, because it's one of those things that you put it out and it's going to live forever out on the
Yeah.
blockchain. How did you guys what was your thought process around it?
Yeah, so we released the token in 2018, and it was, at that time, it was always to kind of enhance our ecosystem. At that point, we had IBM was one of our first customers, and it was really just to kind of allow some of these more enterprise businesses to have it and use it for discounting fees or to offset their fees. And that's very similar to it's kind of morphed of how we use it today in our ecosystem. Again, we have hundreds of businesses on our platform, and so what we do is we incentivize or we reward businesses. The more payments that they put through our payment processing, like the traditional side, we actually reward them with our cryptocurrency, which is our token. And they can either use that token to offset their merchant processing fees, like the typical 2.9% processing fee. So it's effectively, um, takes that cost basis to zero, right? So, you know, um, basically free payments, and then they can either use it to offset fees, or they can use it for uh, to put on their balance sheet, because as we were discussing today, they may choose to keep it on their balance sheet to have it to do what they want with it. And so they can either keep it on their balance sheet, or they can lend it to other businesses and earn yield on it through decentralized finance. So they can give other businesses more working capital, right? So that's another use case is DeFi. And then third is governance, like back to what you were saying. Um, you know, for as many people who hold the token, they can actually vote on, some of the changes or some of the things that we want to do going into the future.
That's
So
very
it's
cool.
it's super exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, and it's, as you create these, you have to just really think through, like, I'm going to be responsible for these for a long time. And we see a lot of, people flush, throw out a token and then they don't really know what to do with it. And so, it's interesting to hear how yours has evolved over time, and it actually has some really great use cases. I used to run a large retail operation, and I can tell you, I would have loved to have anything at all that would have offset those fees, because that's how you save the bottom line. Um,
Yeah.
when you're talking about running over the rails, you're doing payment processing on this, but you're still using, the banks and ACH. How, which network are you on? Which chain are you on? Or let's talk a little bit about kind of the back end. We'll get a little geeky with this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're interoperable. So we first launched on Stellar. Um, no surprise, because that's kind of where we started with IBM, and it is a protocol that's very specific to payments, right? It confirms in 3 to 5 seconds. Like the transaction fees are tenths of a penny, and the throughput is like 3,000 per second. So it's very similar to how like a Visa would work today. So we first started on that. We also issued a portion of the token on Ethereum. So we have Ethereum, so it's just like, so it's interoperable between the two. And I think that you'll see in the future that we'll go on other uh, protocols that are more similar, or more suitable for payments. So you can take your guess on what those things are. There's Solana that's out there today. It's Ripple, and if you kind of investigate what those look like, we're totally open to being on to more, because I think that for us, back to that interoperability, um, I think that it's, you know, you're going to have a lot of different chains for, different use cases. And we want to build for that.
Tammy, with Stronghold, and again, this is a protocol that you guys launched after having been in the industry and asset class for years, to solve a very specific problem, and to have some very specific use cases for blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So can you give us just the broad overview of Stronghold, what you're doing today, and kind of where it goes from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Stronghold is a payments and financial services company, right? We identify with as being a fintech company. And so what we do is allow businesses to connect to our APIs. So we have a developer APIs, and we have like an array of plugins to e-commerce platforms. But we allow everybody to kind of connect to our payment processing platform to um, to process payments either in ACH or credit cards, but we also allow these developers to have access to other more modern payment rails. Um, and so a lot of our use cases today, we do process traditional payments, but they earn rewards. Like all the businesses that kind of process payments through us, they earn rewards in the form of cryptocurrency um, for the more payments that they process through our payment processing, they earn rewards, right? And they can use those rewards to offset fees. So imagine all of those merchant processing fees that every business has to pay for. We can use those. They can the business can use those to offset fees in the form of the token, or they can take that value and stake it and put it in the form of decentralized finance so they can borrow it, or I mean, so they can lend it to other merchants on the network so they can earn yield off that balance. So because we're a payments processing company, we actually have a lot of data, right? We see like how much people can how much people transact over a given period of time, and then we allocate risk scores, if you will, and we're maybe the oracle of the risk score, and so we allow these businesses to kind of earn yield to loan that value to another business in the form of decentralized finance. So we're super excited about that. And then three, it's used for governance. So the more cryptocurrency that you have, SHX, the more that you have voting power to kind of um, you know vote on what's going to happen next in the Stronghold ecosystem.
So just so everyone who's listening understands, who would be your, a couple of your main competitors? Would it be kind of the TransUnion traditional credit card swipers, or who would, if somebody wants to say, I want to use blockchain technology in in our company, um, but they, again, from the CEO perspective, they may not know exactly where
Sure.
this fits into their pipeline.
Yeah, sure. So it would be, we're very similar to like a Stripe, or we're
Yeah,
very similar to like a Dawala or a Square, or an Adyen, or a Fiserv or FIS. So
perfect.
a payment processor.
So, so absolutely, regardless of what your business does, B2B, B2C, you're managing those rails on chain, and as well as rewarding. And for more, the more usage you have, the higher the rewards in Stronghold tokens, which again then can be used to offset your fees, which
That's right.
just goes straight to the bottom line. And I looked at your fees right off the bat, and they're already right in line with every single one of those competitors you just said. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do so as far as everything that's kind of going forward and looking ahead with Stronghold and the payment processing system, where's the biggest industry that really could benefit from utilizing this rail system? Is it people that have more international business, or is it really anyone that would benefit from this technology?
Oh, I think it's, so many different use cases, right? There's so many use cases um, that are kind of underrepresented and underserved today. If you look at things like alcohol distribution, right? There's a lot of regulation around alcohol distribution, and you have to be 21 um, to receive alcohol, because that's the law, you know. And so not all banks are willing to take on folks that are, for example, alcohol distributors, because they have that extra layer of regulatory complexity around it. And so, it's a lot of that. And so, if you see if something has a little more regulatory complexity around it, and it's not served by a lot of the mainstream banks, I think that's those are great examples of where it's very useful. So, back to your like cross-border payments, yeah, a lot of banks don't allow you to do cross-border payments, or allow businesses that do cross-border payments to operate within their within their bank. So it tends to be ones that have a little more regulatory lift. And so I can just start rattling off, what those are. But I think you get the point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
So
always say, like, look, this has nothing to
okay.
do with taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, always pay your
No.
taxes. It
Yeah.
has to do with the blockades, and again, a quick story which I'm sure you can appreciate. I had to receive in, not send. I needed to receive in from a foreign bank to one of my accounts. And I said, when we asked the banker, we need international wire instructions. They sent me a form to complete to ask where it was coming from, and it was not a large amount, but they were very
Right.
clear that they wanted to understand where I was receiving this money from and why. And I just that's not okay.
But it's very well, it is okay. So it's
Well,
okay. So it's
there's
actually okay.
yeah,
So here, let me give you a perspective. It's
good.
actually okay, right? Because there's things like OFAC that exist. There's sanctions
Hmm.
that we have to follow in the payment world, and those still apply to us. What is amazing about the blockchain technology is that you wouldn't have received the form asking where it
Yeah,
was come from, where it's coming from. Like if it's on technology, then you can actually see where the sending bank is. And if it is in the regulatory technology is what's so amazing about this. So if you see it's from a place that is on the OFAC sanction list, then you can block it, right? It's
yep,
it's the regulatory technology that is so robust. So instead of you getting a form, it could have been, hey, is it received from one of these countries? If it is, then let it go through. If it's not, then we send you a nice email and kind of point back to this isn't acceptable in this jurisdiction, and then off you go. But it's amazing. The regular That's what excites me most is actually the regulatory technology that can be programmed into these payments. It's so rich. It's so amazing.
how do we educate the regulators? I did an interesting podcast with some auditors, cryptocurrency
Mhm.
auditors. So you can imagine how detailed of a conversation that was, and they
Mhm.
were very clear that when they deal with crypto funds, VC funds that deal in cryptocurrencies, that the regulators have no idea what to do. There's no book, there's no glossary. They don't understand the difference between USDC, USDT, and DAI, and they just
Mhm.
everything
Yeah.
kind of stops there. How do we get past that? How do we educate, and does it take an administration that just is blockchain friendly, or are we going to be fighting this for a few years?
It's going to be time. I think there's some amazing initiatives. Um, let's see, I think I just interviewed someone, Sheila Warren from the Crypto Coalition Institute. A lot of people are doing, amazing work in Washington to educate our, within the U.S., right, to educate, you know, some policy there. But think of this policy. This policy is global. So whatever jurisdiction that you're in, um, there will be probably nuanced different regulation for each jurisdiction. And as long as we talk to our policymakers within those jurisdictions, I think that we can get there. There are some jurisdictions that are much more friendly than others, um, and it'll take you know for example, it might take New Zealand uh, you know a shorter period of time to kind of adopt some of these newer regulations versus a country like the U.S. that has to get 50 states to agree to a regulation. So I think it's circumstantial, but I do see more and more governments and regulators from different jurisdictions adopting it in different ways, and it's super exciting. But it will take time and it will take education.
Tammy, what else in and around the entire Web3 infrastructure has you kind of excited? Whether it's NFTs, NFT projects, communities, what in the last few weeks have you just seen online and around the asset class that you thought was just cool?
It's really just the adoption, right? I think, every time we go through one of these um, waves, or you just see more and more developer interest on top of these platforms, and that's what it is. I mean, there's more people building on blockchain than there has been ever, and that's super exciting. I think we have a long way to go, um, and a lot more people from different backgrounds, with legal backgrounds, regulatory backgrounds, banking backgrounds, governance backgrounds, just software developers. There's just more and more people interested in it and with more diverse backgrounds. And I think that, once we, have, more folks around the table that with diverse perspectives, I think that we can build, you know, a better future on top of the technology. So I'm super excited about, the adoption and the attention that it's getting today.
And the adoption in places in the world that do not have TradFi, do not have traditional banking. You know, the banking for the unbanked, I guess, is an easy way to say it.
Yeah,
So it's really great to
absolutely.
see, these third world and second world countries pushing and adopting cryptocurrencies and around, and I think it's one of those that, used in a proper manner and with proper expectations, there's very little risk. If you're trading and bouncing back and forth and really trying to leverage or do whatever it is, that's the same as any volatile market. You could get caught in the stock market in a bad way, but storing and utilizing these in your day-to-day life, I think is really interesting, and I'm excited to see over the next few years kind of how Stronghold continues to grow, how you guys continue to adopt. I'm really curious about the other chains you guys are going to go on to, and I live in a world where I don't think there's one chain to rule them all. I think there's going to be lots of chains. I think Polkadot is very interesting with the parachains. I think it's a very interesting, but still very early project that they're working on.
I agree. I think there's just, yeah, there's more collective mind share in what we're doing today, and it's great.
Fabulous. Well, Tammy, how can if people have more interest or more curiosity about Stronghold or want to utilize it for their business, what's the best way to get a hold of you or straight to Stronghold's sales team?
Yeah, so you can find us at stronghold.co, and there are, plenty of product and information pages there to kind of, to kind of solve for what you're looking to solve for. And if you want to learn more about our token, it's at stronghold.co/SHX. And you can find us on Twitter at StrongholdPay.
Fabulous, fabulous. Y Whales, again, that's Tammy Camp from Stronghold. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you soon.